I'm excited to have a conversation with you.
Yeah, I am too. Well, let's get in here. Let's start it up right. It's wonderful to meet you again. Thank you so much for taking a minute out for the program.
Thank you.
You bet. So let's begin our story before we get into your work as a TEDx speaker and as a writer, everything that you're doing. And I want to begin with this. 6 years ago, this pandemic was changing the world, changing our lives. How did you get through that era, and how has it changed the way that you approach business and living today?
I'll never forget the day we were all sent home. I work for a educational nonprofit, and the minute we were home, it was a bit of a culture shock, right? Because we all were a bit disoriented and trying to figure out how we can best connect under such circumstances. Suffice it to say, I was really amazed at how quickly we were able to all adapt, right? In fact, we were in the middle of launching a distance testing situation where people could take an assessment from their homes as opposed to going to a test center. And miraculously, we managed to make it work. There's something about being under such pressure, right? And knowing that you have to figure it all out against all odds. And I think that really drove us to be successful. But I would say some of the key takeaways from that period were you got to really rely on yourself to be industrious, but at the same time, really take care of yourself because you may find yourself sitting at the desk all hours of the day. Don't forget that even in the midst of COVID, there was sunlight to experience. There was a whole world out there, even though you had to go out with such precautions. It was still critical to remember that the whole world was still out there, right? If that
Yeah.
makes any sense.
Oh, it totally does. No, that's brilliant. So I want to get into the good work that you're doing. I want to start by putting you in front of 13-year-olds at career day, and one of the kids wants to know what you do for a living. How do you synthesize your
Mm,
day job to make sense to them?
sure. So I am a marketer by trade, and we marketers, our job is to help position the value of something that is being offered in the world, right? It might be the shampoo you use every day, or it might be your Netflix service. Anything that is being sold in the world, there is a marketing component to it. And what's exciting about the marketing profession is that you, as someone who can come in and really influence the communication mix, if you will, there are many ways to market a product or service, everything from television and radio, and obviously in our digital age, there is social media. So there are many touch points. And part of the excitement and fun of marketing is that you get to think about all these elements of the mix to see what works, what doesn't, doing a lot of experimentation so that your message gets through to your target audience.
So, what did you want to be when you were that age? When you were 12 or 13, what was your dream job?
Well, I actually had my first job, Joe, when I was 13.
Wow.
I was actually a news broadcaster. I was on a children's news show in Manila, the Philippines. It was called Newswatch Junior Edition. And I'll never forget the day that broadcast went on air. I saw it and I said to my father, I really want to be on that show. And he actually drove me to the TV station and I had an audition, and 2 weeks later, I was on air, which was a bit of a shock.
Yeah.
But what I loved about that first job is that it kind of was a quick confidence boost builder, right? Even at such a young age, to know that if you are really interested in something, there's nothing like going out there and seeing if you can be part of it. So I learned that early on, and I think that kind of has helped me over the years really set the stage for the directions I wanted to go with my career, whether it was marketing or sales or training or writing, because I'm also a writer, is that if you really want to go after something, by all means do it, but also you get to consider the options to figure out exactly where you might want to go. It's a lot of that self-assessment, taking time to assess your strengths, your weaknesses, but also your true desires, and taking the appropriate steps to move to that next phase, if you will.
So I remember when I was a kid,
Mhm.
late night talk shows were a big deal, and we watched Letterman and all of that. And
Sure.
in our little town that we grew up in, Liberty, my best friend at the time, Bill, called me up out of the blue and said, "Hey, you need to come over to my house. We're going to put on Hawaiian shirts and we're going to go down to the studio and we're going to win some prize or something, or we're going to get on the air." And I was like, okay. So I just ride my bike over there. We go over there. We get down there and we get on the air and they're like, well, what do you guys want? You're here. We're in the studio. We're talking. What do you want? And they did these little character things with Gumby and Pokey, and we asked for them. And after that, I remember everybody would come up to us at the football games on Friday. Hey, you were the one that was on TV, and we wanted Gumby and Pokey. It became a thing. But I remember what you just said right there. If you want something, we just went there. We didn't call. We didn't do anything. We literally went down there, and it happened. And it was wonderful.
What amazing story. And wasn't it fun to just kind of like be in the limelight and your friends and family are saying,
Yeah.
I saw you on TV.
Yeah.
And you kind of get a bit of a high out of that. It
Absolutely.
was fun. Yeah.
Yeah, at that young age. So, when I look at your life, you've been in the Philippines, Nepal, Thailand, Japan. You've had this wonderful ticket of seeing all these different cultures and peoples throughout your life. What was growing up like for you that's kind of emboldened the way that you are with the way you conduct business today?
Right. So I was really fortunate. I did have this nomadic childhood. Mind you, when I was a child, I thought it was the most unfortunate thing in the world, right? My father was a roving academic, and with his job, we went to different parts of the world. And at the end of an academic year or two, then he would move on to the next opportunity. So there's a lot of heartbreak and loss in each transition, right? Which is you have to leave your friends, go into a new school, readjust, reinvent yourself even to an extent. So that was a challenge. But I can now say in retrospect the value of that experience, because it enabled me to really be more adaptable, to be more flexible in my career and in the way I work with coworkers and stakeholders, a lot of flexibility and improvisation as needed at the right time. So it just gave me really a lot of tools going forward. And now, even in my business career today, a lot of the lessons from moving from Kathmandu to Bangkok to Manila to Tokyo, those continue to come into play to this day. And the other part of it is also having a cultural sensitivity for the local conditions, if you will. I think what has served me well in my career, because it has been global in nature, is that every time you enter a new market, a new country, it's important to learn a bit about the history and the culture and even learn those top 10 or 15 phrases in the language. That gets you a very long way because folks know that you're not just coming in with a very specific agenda. You are taking time to understand their culture, their language, and you really ingratiate yourself really well that way.
So, who's been your inspirational force or your hero, so to speak, in your life?
Yeah, I know many folks, and it's funny, we just had Father's Day, right? So
Yeah.
my father has been on my mind. He passed away about 5, 6 years ago, but I have to say, he has left an indelible mark on me. And that is, again, if it wasn't for him, his curiosity for the world, and I'll never forget, his words were, you can never spend enough on food to nourish yourself and education
Yeah.
to ensure that you are moving ahead in life. And just think about that philosophy and really living up to it. That has just made all the difference in how I grew up and what I was able to see of the world and the path it's taken me. So it has to be my father for sure.
So before we get into the Janus Plan, your book, I want to know this. Obviously, your career, you've accumulated all of this wisdom and knowledge over time. Give me a snapshot of your career and what ultimately led to you wanting to write this book.
Absolutely. So I actually started, I told you I was a newscaster early on, but when I got out of college, long story short, I was an international student from the Philippines. And at that time, there weren't very many companies who were hiring international students. So I, by accident, ended up in retail management. I worked for the May Company, May department stores in Cleveland, Ohio. Um, but what was wonderful about that job is you got to learn about the nuts and bolts of marketing and selling, right? Merchandising, understanding what was moving on the floor and adjusting your merchandising and setup and whatnot. I went into the buying office there as well as at Macy's. After business school, I ended up working for Clairol, the beauty care company. And my job was to launch Herbal Essences around the world, a very big brand, but it was all about understanding whether the campaigns we set up in the US would be adaptable into local markets. Half the time they were, half the time they weren't. And so you had to think about alternative campaigns to ensure that you still got the essence of your messaging and your positioning of your product, but keeping in mind what was culturally relevant and appropriate, right? So that has all been great practice ground, which led me then to writing. I wrote after I burnt out of corporate America, and I thought I'd take a break. And I've always wanted to write, and it's something I have suppressed as a passion. Finally, had the chance to do it. And so I started writing. I wrote my boyhood memoir. I started writing essays, news stories for the New York Times, the Philadelphia Inquirer, Newsweek, and it just kind of took off. Again, it was just that one step, right? That first step. And you get your break. I got an essay published in the New York Times that led to pitching for them. So it really just continued to snowball in the best possible way. But eventually I came back to marketing and I found out, Joe, that there is a way to have parallel paths where you have a day job that you really enjoy, in my case, marketing, but at the same time, keep the flames going on a passion, a personal passion, which is writing. And so I wrote the memoir, and then I eventually came to writing the Janus, my forthcoming book. It's the Janus Plan, a no resolutions path to begin your year with intention. Because I learned a lot from my burnout experience and the fact that I was a chronic New Year's resolution maker and breaker. How could I get out of that vicious out? Because I had that burnout and the chance to really take a step back and consider what was working, what wasn't, and finding a framework that enabled me to have sustainable goals here on, the beginning of the new year here on out. And so there on out. So that was kind of like the turning point where my writing and marketing came together as careers and passions. And now I have this book and I continue to write essays, op-eds. That's my story. It's really this dual existence in the best possible way.
So, who were like writers or journalists that you admired that maybe you emulated or looked up to?
Sure. So at the time, I was very big into watching because I was a newscaster, CNN, and, in the 90s and 2000s, there were journalists like Christiane Amanpour
Yep.
at CNN. She is the well-known international journalist. What I was really impressed with her is that she went into the middle of war zones. She was fearless and managed to get a story out, right? Even in the most difficult circumstances. And what I've learned from her example is that you can craft a good story, you can find the best sources, even in the most difficult conditions, and still come out with a narrative that the audience can relate to and better understand what is truly going on, right? It's not just the surface level reporting, it's also the analysis and perspective of those who are directly affected by war, for example, right? So she's definitely at the top of my list. There are many others, but I would have to say if there's one person that I truly admire as a journalist, it's Christian Amanpour.
So, what is the energy for you every day to do the work that you do? You got a lot going on that affects lives. What is the energy for you to do that well? Take care of your soul, all of that holistically. What gets you going every
Mhm.
day?
Absolutely. It's a lot of basics. It's the hours of sleep. Everyone talks about sleep hygiene. Boy, there's just no getting around it, right? You just don't have that proper sleep. I even make sure I have a device that helps me keep score of my sleep. And if I'm not passing the score, and I feel it. I don't even need the score necessarily to tell me that I'm lacking sleep. So it's the sleep, it's the exercise routine. I'm really happy about. I found a small movement studio near where I live. They have classes early in the morning. Again, come hell or high water, no matter how cold or hot it is out there, I find myself in the gym in a small class so that you can be motivated by those around you. And then more recently, and probably still my biggest challenge, is my diet, right? Uh, you know, the doctor said you got to watch your cholesterol, you got to watch your sugars. And so that, in a way, has been a bit of a kick to say, Jobert, you really got to pay attention to this. So I've gotten better there. But to answer your question, energy really is made up by the basics, right? In this case, the sleep, the exercise, the food I intake, but also my social network and keeping a nice busy schedule, but balance. And then coming back to a point I made earlier about COVID, you got to get out there under the sunlight.
Yeah, you certainly do. So, when you look back on your career, any career that, you know, grows and expands, there's risks that you have to take.
Mm.
What's been the biggest risk that you've taken in your career?
Mm. A few. So one turning point was after my burnout, right? Because I had this high flying career launching Herbal Essences across multiple markets, the Middle East, Asia Pacific. It was grueling work, but exciting work. But I had to take a break away from it. I just left corporate America. Quite a bit of risk because I did it, as I would now say in retrospect, at the height of my earning years in my late 30s, early 40s. So that was a risk. And I decided to leave New York City, move out to Pennsylvania, where it was more of a bit of a slower pace in life and concentrate on my writing. But I am so thankful that I took that risk, right? Because it was what we now call a radical sabbatical, which is you really take that big step back to see how you're showing up, both for those around you and the world in general, and to also think about what really matters to me and how do I want to pursue that before I run out of time, right? So I think that was a big risk with good reward. I think we make risks every day of different sizes in our jobs. Sometimes we are under pressure to deliver results, and then we have to figure out, well, how am I going to meet that plan? And I know we all face that. And what I've learned is every time I'm faced with a pressure situation, I got to take that step back. It's all about, and that's what I talk about the Janus Plan. Step one, ponder the past.
Yeah.
Before you cross that threshold, take the time to really think about what things are teaching you. What are the lessons that are really in front of you? And don't hide from them up front and think about them in order to lead you into the path forward. And again, how critical is it to really know where you've been before where you decide to go, right?
Yeah, for sure. So let me ask you this. If you had a dream tonight, you ran into the 18-year-old version of you. You walked into
Mm,
a room and there was a film projector and you clicked play and a 60
mm.
second highlight reel showed up there on the wall. Would that young version of you believe your life turned out this way?
Huh. Love that question. I would say in certain aspects, yes. I think that the 18-year-old knew, I was leaving school. I went to high school in Tokyo. I went to the Midwest, to Michigan for college. I was frightened by whatever was on the other side. So I would say, but I knew because I had already lived in many cultures and kind of was pretty good at adapting and assimilating that I would do well in that regard. What has surprised me is the career path I've taken. Little did I know I would really have this big global career. I've now been in the consumer industry. I've been in the furniture business. I've been in the energy business. I am now in educational assessments. I'm now doing philanthropy. Who would have thunk in a way? And I know, again, we all face that, right? If we can all talk about our careers, no career is one straight. It kind of zigzags here and there. So that's the fun, excitement, scary part of it, but that's life and that's career. So I'm thankful for that. And I think we just have to learn to enjoy the ride.
Yeah, for sure. So when you look at that 60-second highlight reel, what are you the happiest about, the proudest of?
I'm gonna have to say is the writing part. I'm really happy. It's all combined and holistic, right? Which is if it was not for me pursuing my writing, I would not be a better marketer or have, really perform well in my day job. Because I am so passionate about the writing and I'm able to produce and very fortunately have now my second book about to come out. That is such an accomplishment. I am so proud of it, but it's also made me a better worker on my day job. Friends sometimes say, well, how do you find all the time for it? And I just say, it just happens. There's something about it that just enables the situation to unfold the way it has. And one could say the busier you are, the better. But I think it's more about what you want to pursue and put out into the world, and what you want to do the same way for your day job, and it somehow works. Now, don't get me wrong, there are times when it's really stressful or I have to make choices. It'd be nice to go with friends out to that movie or, to a restaurant or whatnot. You do have to make those sacrifices along the way, but somehow it's all managed to work out.
So at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you. Family, friends, clients, everyone that gets your book, everyone that delves into different bubbles in your world, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I think I am a messenger, someone who can help others take that pause. There's something about the pause and reflection and understanding the lessons of the recent past that has served me well every single time, even from childhood. And that's kind of what has led to the development of the Janus Plan. So I would say I'm a good listener, a good companion. If I have a friend or a colleague who is faced with a situation, they can come to me in confidence. And I also now, I would say, when I wrote the Janus Plan, that's the voice. Someone actually told me that's the voice that's in the Janus Plan. You sound like a confidant, someone who is caring, someone who is willing to listen and understand what one goes through. And all my prompts and exercises in the book kind of reflect that approach. So I would say I'm a good companion, whether you deal directly with me or through my writing. Yeah, I think I'm a good companion and good ear, and I sometimes I will provide great advice.
So let me kind of tap into that level of adventure and travel that you have and mince that with journalism. If you could cover one story in the history of journalism, what
Mm,
story would you love to have been on site to cover as a journalist?
wow, wow. Great question. So there are just so many events in history, and gosh, I would even go back to. So I might go back way back to tell you why. Um, it will be a sad story because my grandparents, my father's parents, uh, my grandfather was a governor of an island in the Philippines. They were part of the guerrilla movement against the Japanese occupation. Unfortunately, they were executed a week or two before the Philippines was liberated
Oh,
from the Japanese.
wow.
And this is a story, a narrative in my family that has just affected the whole clan. I never knew my grandparents, but I respect them. My father found their remains. That, in a way, has affected how he has lived his life. And even when we were moving to Japan because he had a job there, he wanted to make sure that what he experienced as a child was not going to negatively experience what he wanted for his family,
Yeah.
which was for us to continue to be educated, to see the world, to learn, to understand other people. So there are many strands there, right, that
Yeah.
are really worthy of a story. I would love to report on that because I'm sure it was also a difficult and exciting time for the Filipino people as well as for the Americans, because the Americans lost so much in the war. I think if I had to choose an event that I'd be a journalist for, I'd say that's it because of all the resonance for
Yeah.
me and my family.
That's fascinating. So if anybody wants to pick up a copy of the Janus Plan, they want to reach out, they have questions, hiring, any of the good business, where do they go?
Absolutely. Please come to my author website. It's Jobert E Abueva, middle initial E.com. There you'll get all the information about the Janus Plan, about the bonuses that are attached to the book, workshops, facilitation. Happy to discuss the Janus Plan with anyone and everyone. So that's the best place, best destination, Joe.
Wonderful. I will put all these links in the show notes. Jobert, this has been great. So great to meet you. Thank you for your story. Thank you for the light you're putting in the world. I really appreciate it.
Thank you to you. Appreciate it.